Welcome to Completing the Puzzle with Jason DeFranco. I'm your host today, Matt Doolittle, and I'm here with Mr. Jason DeFranco. How are you doing?
Great, you?
Doing good. You feeling better from the last time we spoke?
Yeah.
All that cleared out and everything?
Not all, but slow but steady, gradual improvement.
All right.
As long as it keeps going in the right direction, I'm happy.
Yeah, perfect. All right, so this week we are talking about time management, and what we're calling this one is time in life. So there's the time in your life that you've got to decide what is more valuable, how you are managing that, and how you're working that balance. So the one thing we're going to talk about with Jason specifically is he's kind of changed his entire time management. And you see it as a complete premium in your life, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And what's a typical day look like for you in terms of how your time was and how it is now?
No such thing as typical. So if we go back 5 years, when the business was younger and it was primarily based on the founders, we did it through endurance. You know, Chad literally, he worked a 36-hour day once. We routinely put in 100-hour weeks. We had someplace to sleep at the lab when we needed to, kind of thing. And, you know, we were a little bit younger then, but it was about not stopping. We would just make the most of the day because the day wouldn't end. You can't do that forever. You can't do that indefinitely, and you also are wasting a lot by doing that because you're tired a lot. You can't make the best decisions. You can't be concerned about the things you need to be concerned about because you're just in this survival mode of I'll just keep going. Now, each day has a structure to it. Each day has a purpose to it. I spend time getting ready for the week so that I know that when I'm executing during the week, I know I'm hitting the marks I need to hit. And it's funny, I work far less hours now than I expected to now. I knew I would cut back a little from the craziness of being a startup, but I expect I'd cut back to 70 hours a week and call it a day. And I'm working like 40 and 50-hour weeks. Some of that's post-COVID, still recovering a little bit, but if I get a little bit better at the way I use my time, there isn't a reason to work more hours. Right. Because each hour I'm spending is that much more productive.
And you feel like you're getting more done with the way you've changed
Holy
everything?
cow. Dramatically.
Yeah.
I literally, it's becoming normal for me to look at what would have been a month's worth of work and putting it into a week.
Okay.
Don't always hit everything, but close.
Yeah.
Almost a month's worth in a week.
And you've got a little bit of a different work week. So what is kind of when you lay out your week, like what days do you do what, throughout from a typical, what would be a Monday to Friday for everybody? It's a little different for you. So tell us about that.
Well, my work week starts on Sunday because that's when I do my strategy work. That's when I plot out the week, determine the priorities for the week, figure out what people I need to meet with on which days and how each day is going to unfold.
Is that Sunday a little more quiet for you? So you're not at the office.
I'm not at
People
work.
they're expecting to not have to call you. I mean, they can expect a text from you, obviously, but
a lot of people get texts from me on Sundays. Yeah.
But you're not getting bombarded with stuff. People aren't coming into the office. You've got your space. You lay everything out. So tell us more about your Sundays.
Well, so
I find it fascinating.
I'm working at home, and I have the family at home. They find something to do for part of the day. They'll go to the park, go do something for the kids to burn off some energy, and to leave me in solitude. And I do it in my bar, in my rec room. I have an 18-foot bar, and I clear everything off the top of it, and I start laying out sheets of paper. And I start with a single sheet, and I just start jotting down my notes. I have a laptop open with the calendar and the agenda items from the previous week, things that were takeaways from meetings, projects that are in process. And I go through all of those things and pull out what do I need to do this week that relates to that for things that have some continuity to them. And I just think, I'll go through the roster sometimes. And I'll look at the roster and say, who on the roster do I need to spend a little time with this week? I will look at emails and messages from people that I didn't have an answer for in the moment and decide if there are things that need to be addressed in the coming week. And then I've got the days of the week broken down. that each day has a specific focus that's repetitive. Monday is my face of the company day. It's when I work on things that face out from the company or face into the company from the executive suite kind of thing. That, these are the days that I focus on communications, the days when we record the podcast.
Exactly.
They're the days that I try to schedule meetings with outsiders, with vendors, with contractors, things like that. Tuesdays is all about the people. Tuesdays is all people development. It's when we have team leader meetings. It's when I have one-on-one meetings with individuals about growth plans. I spend a good portion of Tuesday with Melissa, the HR director, talking through different people's situations and what's next for them. It's when I do evaluations, all that kind of stuff. Wednesdays is a strategy day, but it's more like an operation strategy day. It's an execution day. Any big projects that are ongoing, we're buying the next building next door and stuff. So on Wednesdays, I'll be working on stuff for the new layout. I'm going to look at another facility on Wednesday to see if it's something we want to purchase. The ideas for other businesses. Wednesdays is when we bought the limo. Wednesdays is when we, do these different things, buy the float tank, decide what these other businesses are going to be, those kinds of things. So each day has a specific, it has an agenda,
reason behind
but yeah,
it. Yeah.
there's a philosophical thing that each day represents, and I try to bundle anything that has to do with that facet of the business on that day. Thursdays is an optional day. I don't work most Thursdays. I don't come into the office. I'm probably working.
Well, you don't ever not work, so.
Yeah, I'm doing something, but and that's the offset for Sunday because I don't spend time with the family like most people do on Sundays. I do. We have dinner together and we spend time together, but a good portion of my day is blocked out for work. I'm in the rec room with the doors closed. We got these heavy oak doors. I've got music cranked, and the music changes.
Yeah.
When I'm trying to get fired up, I'm putting on, heavy metal and cranking it up. And then when I need more calm, I'll switch to classical and turn it way down. And the pool table's behind me when I'm mulling over something in my head, trying to get the last piece to fit in my head before I put it on paper. I'll turn around and shoot pool for 5 minutes and then come running over to the page to scribble down the latest thought. By the time I'm done, I have many pages. I'll start out with just a few ideas, and then I'll start breaking them up into bigger pieces of ideas, and then I'll start putting them into slots in my schedule, and I'll end up with a sheet for each day that's formatted for the day. I'll have each of the big projects will have a sheet, and then I go crazy with Post-its. So I've color-coded Post-its that represent different things. If it's something for my assistant, it goes on a red Post-it. If it's something for HR, it goes on a blue Post-it, these kinds of things, so that when I come back to work, I can immediately go, oh, there was something I needed to talk to Kelly about. Where's the red Post-it? And it's a visual cue that I can get straight to it. And that all morphed.
So, that's kind of your week, and you obviously take a Saturday off, but again, you don't really take days off. But, when you were putting this together, what size did the lab start at?
One person. Well, two.
Two. So it started out at 2 people. Now it's expanded to about 80 people.
Close to 90 now.
So when you were putting that together and you're deciding, okay, now I have a staff, now I've got everything, what key people in that staff chain did you add to help you with your time management?
I didn't. I added people, and they made me fix my time management.
Okay.
We knew we needed better ways to take care of our people. So we created the HR position, and we wanted a senior HR person, a truly skilled person who understood all of the aspects of HR and did it our way. I hate companies where HR is the complaint department or the sexual harassment department or the ergonomics department or whatever. HR is supposed to be about finding good people, recruiting good people, growing them, training them, rewarding them and incentivizing them, keeping them happy, and if they don't belong here, making sure they exit gracefully. HR isn't a complaint department. It's in many ways the heart of the business. It's what keeps the blood pumping in the business. So we wanted a really high-level person. We found Melissa, and she was perfect. And she felt that way, too. She was like, this is perfect for me, too. And the first thing she said was, you need an assistant. And I said, no, I'm not one of those guys. And she said, you need an assistant. And she went looking for an executive assistant. And when Kelly came on board, she had questions for me like, what day do you want to do this? And I would say, I don't know, whenever there's time. And I realized almost immediately as she's asking me the questions that my answers weren't good enough.
And there wasn't any time. There was no extra time for this, for that. You weren't able to lay out
Shoehorn
things.
something in. We'll do 1 extra hour that night. I don't know. I'll take it home with me and figure it out. Those were normal answers every day.
Well, and like you've told us, and we obviously won't say, but there's a value to your time overall. Everybody's got a value to their time, and knowing that, and once you kind of had that looked at, was that able to help you once you got an evaluation of your time?
Oh yeah. All of a sudden, so there's this concept of opportunity cost, and most people know what that means. If I spend an hour doing this, I can't spend an hour doing that. And when you're talking about time management, the opportunity cost is what you could be doing with that time. And I used it as an excuse to not cut my grass. I used to hate cutting the grass.
Yeah.
And at some point I went, you know what? The 2 hours it takes me to cut the grass, the rate that I get paid, it's cheaper for me to pay someone else to cut my grass. It was a rationalization because I didn't want to cut my grass.
You just want to cut your grass.
I didn't want to cut my grass. But it was a rationalization that I could accept logically made sense because I could put it down on paper and the math worked.
Yeah.
And that's what most people do. They say they make it binary. I could do A or I could do B. So if A is one option and B is another, which one's better? What I've started doing is forget A or B today. What is the best use I could have for 1 hour of my time? If I spent 1 hour of my time on something, what is the biggest, baddest thing I could do with that hour that would be truly impressive? And I compare everything to that. Whether it's a hard-hitting meeting with a manager who's growing and needs guidance, that could really steer them the right way at the right time to help them improve, that would be a big deal. That's a great use of an hour. Whether it's personal time, I could spend this hour doing things I want to be doing, and those are very valuable to me. I think about the best use for that hour and compare it to what I am spending this hour on. Instead of saying, I could go into this room or this room, which one seems like the better choice, I say, well, I'm supposed to be doing this right now. This is what's in front of me. But if I was going to pick the most valuable use of my time for however long this is going to be, what would that be?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I look at what I'm about to do and go, well, that's a complete waste of time.
Yeah.
It seemed pretty good when it was binary A or B. But A compared to infinite, there's no categorizing.
And obviously we all want our personal time and everything. So you got to compare that to work time and be like, I'd rather do this than that right now because this is worth more to me.
Yep.
In a personal way. Now, and you kind of hit on where you were pulling this stuff from. What materials did you look at to kind of get an example of this? Because we all, you may be the greatest genius in the world, but somebody's read a book where they got an idea from it that filtered down or is, from 300 years ago, and they're like, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
So what materials did you pull from?
I don't have very many ideas. I have discoveries. I find something somewhere and go, that's really good. I should do that. Most of it comes from books. I like reading history now. But I love reading self-improvement. I read The 7 Habits, Stephen Covey's book, which changed my life, literally changed my life when I read it the first time. And I've read it about 30 times now. Every year I read it again. Sometimes I read it in the middle of the year because someone asks me a question and I want to be sure I quote it properly.
But didn't even he get an idea from that?
He did. An idea that I thought was his. I thought it was Stephen Covey's time management matrix, the 4 quadrants of rating importance and urgency in tasks. And it turns out it was Dwight Eisenhower's quadrants.
So he kind of lifted it from there.
He did. I don't think he did it
Made it his
maliciously.
own.
He never labeled it the Stephen Covey time. Right. I called it that because it came out of his book.
Yeah.
And he tweaked it a little bit. But Dwight Eisenhower came up with this thing because he accomplished a tremendous amount. He was probably the most effective president of the modern age in terms of the things that he accomplished. You look at what a president accomplishes today, and it's very minimal. It ain't much. They kind of just try not to get fired or impeached or something these days.
Yeah. Or they're running for the next one.
Right. I mean, Dwight Eisenhower created the highway system. He brought 2 new states into the country. He fought the Cold War and kept it cold. He did all kinds of things. Really impressive. And it was recognized in his time, which is unusual, just how much he was actually getting done. And he was asked, how do you get so much done? How do you prioritize with all the problems of the world? How do you pick what you're going to do? And he had this 4-quadrant matrix. And he said, there is urgent and important. And that's what I do as soon as it's in front of me. He says, there's important that is not urgent. And those I put on my schedule to do. And then there are things that are urgent but not necessarily important. And those he delegates. And then he says, not urgent, not important, I ignore. And he just had this very, very clean methodology. Now, most of us don't have the resources to just do that.
Right.
The President of the United States can decide
He's
things
got
and
people
make
to
them
delegate
happen.
to. Yeah.
But it was so crisp and clean, and Covey uses that same 4-quadrant and that same rationale just to at least prioritize tasks in your life. But prioritization assumes that you have a reason. Why is something important? You kind of have to have your own priorities figured out so you can prioritize tasks and events in your life. If you haven't defined what's really important to you, then it's really hard to put things in the right quadrant on that grid.
Right.
So there's a lot of goal setting and soul searching that you do. The first time I read the book, I wrote a personal mission statement because it's one of the things they suggest that you do as an exercise. And I wrote a personal mission statement, and I changed a bunch of things the next week. I stopped doing a bunch of things and started doing a bunch of different things because I realized I had just kind of been operating my life. I hadn't been driving it. It was almost like I was along for the ride, and I can, like I'm a passenger in a car.
Yeah.
I can change the station on the radio and roll the windows down, but I'm not really in control. I'm trying to control what I can in my little microcosm. And after reading that book, I'm like, wait, I'm the one holding the steering wheel here. I don't have to limit myself to just which music am I listening to.
Yeah.
I actually should choose where I want to go.
About how long ago did you decide that? Or when you read that, or how?
35.
30.
35 or 36
Okay.
was when I read that, and it changed. It was one of those moments, one of those epiphany moments where it was just the clouds cleared, and I went, this is a universal truth. I need to embrace this and use it.
Wait, have you ever seen any bad examples of the use of that kind of idea?
Of
Of the time management and how you delegate and everything? Like,
Oh, sure.
You have an example of that?
your little brain creeps up on you and does things. You've got your logical brain, but you've got your emotional brain, and your emotional brain will try to get you to do things, and then your logical brain will try to explain why. That's what rationalizing is. So you will suddenly decide that something is not important anymore because you're tired of dealing with it.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that mission statement, if you don't have a value system, then things can drift. It's like not having a compass. You don't know which way you're really going, so you kind of go around this tree and you end up slightly off course. And then this hill's a little steep, so you try to skirt around it, and all of a sudden you're pointed in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
That happens, and you rationalize your way through it because something becomes too difficult or isn't what you thought it would be, doesn't seem worth it anymore. Well, if that's so, you better re-examine your values and your personal mission statement to make sure that you're not just wimping out.
Yeah.
And then rationalizing it by saying, oh, there's a better use for my time.
Yeah. Is that kind of the nature of time management, is just the rationalization or almost the realization that, we don't have an infinite amount of time.
Right.
That's the one thing you can't get back. So once it's gone, it's gone.
I can get more money. I can get more friends. I can open more businesses. I can do any of those things. I can never get more time. The number of seconds that I have left in my life is a fixed number. I don't know what the number is.
Yeah.
If we did, we'd probably screw everything up.
Oh, yeah.
But I know there is nothing I can do to add to that number. It is what it is. There are only 24 hours in the day, which means it's the scarcest resource there is. Forget gold, platinum, or anything else. The scarcest resource in existence is time. That's why people try to create legacies. They do stuff for their kids because it's a way to keep living after they're gone.
Yeah.
But the reality is, when I was working 100 hours a week, it felt like I was paying my dues, but it was also bluster. It was the arrogance of youth. It was, I can do this because I can do this, and not a lot of people have this much stamina kind of thing. It was a point of pride, but it was dumb pride. You hear the joke about the two bulls sitting on a hill?
No.
So there's a young bull and an old bull sitting on a hill overlooking a pasture with a bunch of cows in it. And the young bull, I'm going to be a little graphic, the young bull looks at the older bull and says, hey, how about we go down there and fuck one of them cows? Let's run down there and fuck one of them cows. And the old bull's shaking his head. He says, listen, how about we walk down and then we all of them. There's a difference in perspective. Some of it is patience, but some of it is the wisdom of age. And wisdom is not all it's chalked up to be.
Oh, yeah, I can tell you that.
Sometimes wisdom is desperation.
I just hit 36 and everything hurts and it takes way longer and I can't stay up past 10 o'clock anymore. I used to be up till 12:30 watching Conan, all those shows. Nah, I'm done after the news.
Well, yeah, when I was 20, 36 was old.
Yeah.
I was like, by 36, I'm probably not going to do too much anymore. And when I was 36, I was like, what was I thinking? 45 is when you slow down. And I did that every 5 years. About every 5 years, I'd go, no, it's. Let's just keep moving that line out.
Your priorities start changing and you stop.
I'm 51 now. I'll start slowing down at 65. You know? It's just
by then. So, I mean, and getting into that, you know, you've got new business owners, that, like you were saying, you were working 100 hours a week, burning through it, you know, lighting the candle at both ends.
And proud of it. Proud to be exhausting myself at a task.
Do you think that was overdoing it, though? Do you think you could have had more of a life outside of the
wisdom?
lab?
If I had wisdom, if you had the experience, the years, and the judgment that comes from seeing those kinds of things, I would have changed to doing this back then. Mm-hmm. Maybe I wouldn't have been able to do it at the level I do it now. I wouldn't have had an assistant. I wouldn't have had an HR director. I wouldn't have had people to delegate. I would have, but not these kinds of people to delegate things to. So I couldn't have done it at this level back then. But if I had started practicing back then, I'd be so good at it now. That's the thing. As a student, you look at things like this and you go, oh man, I wish I'd started that 10 years ago. I'd be really good at it now. Mm-hmm. And people look at you and go, what are you talking about? You are really good at it. Oh no, I could be so much better if I had just, you know, you look at it that way.
I think everybody's got the kind of that retrospective of, you know, you look back at some of the stuff you do when you were younger and it's like, that was dumb. Mm-hmm. You shouldn't have done that. Or, you know, you're like, now you calm down a little bit. You see the world from a bigger perspective. Is that kind of where all this came from? Is just you've been able to kind of take a step back and go,
a little bit.
I don't need to do that.
A little bit. And having someone else tell me you don't have to work this hard used to be offensive. When I was in my 30s and someone was like, man, you don't have to work this hard. My response was, you're just saying that because you can't. I was very arrogant about my energy level, about my ability to keep going when other people thought it was way past time to quit. And that served me well. I mean, I got things done and I got to places that I wouldn't have gotten to without that endurance. But if I'd had the wisdom and the judgment, there were a lot of things I didn't need to do with that time.
Well, you didn't have the people to delegate to, right?
True.
So how do you kind of decide the delegation now? Like, do you put it in categories? Like you were saying on Sunday, you have stuff that you lay out, but do you kind of have a delegation of who gets what where?
There's a lot of that. Some of it's just broken down by obvious categories. You know, these are things that are, this is a message that needs to be delivered, this is something that needs to be arranged, this is something that needs to be looked into, and those get delegated to my executive assistant. Things that deal more with people development, I may sit down with Melissa and say, you know, from an HR perspective, here's the 3 people I want you to take a look at. This is what I'm thinking about them. Let's see if that makes sense and see if we can make that happen. Other things, we've got a lot of different ways now we study people. You know, we've got all these team dimension profiles and DISC profiles and Myers-Briggs and lots of things that we do to kind of get a sense of a person. You can't put people into categories like that. People are individuals. Mm-hmm. But there are patterns that people of a certain type tend to do things a certain way or look at things in a certain way. And wherever possible, I want to do that because there aren't enough hours in the day for me to know everyone the way I would want to. And for me to make the best decisions with them, I have to know them. So we take a shortcut. We take things that we have seen before. It's pattern recognition. We know that people of this type generally are not thrilled with these kinds of tasks. We know that they like these kinds of challenges. We know that they're good at these kinds of problems, that sort of thing. And we start with that as a hypothesis. You know, we've got the testing that tells us this person should be good at jigsaw puzzles because of the way their mind works. Mm-hmm. And then we give them a jigsaw puzzle and see if it's really true. And if it's true, then we can keep going with that. If it turns out that they're not, now we know a little bit more about them and can cater their job or the things I ask of them differently. But lots of times now, I don't look for a person to delegate a task to. I look for a group. We were talking about this today. We're talking about working on our phone system because we're not satisfied with it. And I said, well, that's a technical thing. We should talk to our technical guy to take a look at the phone and see if he can make them better. And we got talking about it, but it's also phone skills, phone training, etiquette. There's a lot of different things that interconnect there. Okay, so we decided on a team of 5 people that will take a look at the phones holistically, not just the phone unit, not just the software that drives it, not just the things that it connects to within our other systems, but also the operator. How are they handling the phones? What do they need training on? So we're going to sort of re-envision the way we deal with telephone communications in the company. And there's a 5-person team, and each person was picked for a different reason, one of which is to fill up a roster of different personality types. So there's one person that's kind of an outside-the-box thinker. There's one person that's very grounded, that wants to know literally how are we going to count these. There's one person who's good at advancing an idea. So once the idea has come up and they're thinking it through, this person's really good at vocalizing the different ways this will help. So there's a synergy that forms by understanding those people. And many people would say, you're putting 5 people on this kind of a project, why does just one person do it? And I say, because that's a waste of time. That one person will spend 5 hours and then have to go talk to 3 other people. These 5 people can do it all in 1 hour, which means they'll be ahead by the end of that hour of where the one person would have been after 5.
So by changing your personal time management, you're able to kind of put that into the company as well.
Oh, yeah.
So you can look at everything and see where we're wasting time and what is that costing us, and kind of forget the full business term, but kind of what is that waste of where everything is, and we can be spending more time better doing this, building out a new area, than wasting time on this thing that keeps breaking.
Yep. Lean manufacturing and Six Sigma show us that over and over, that there are dramatic gains to be found from fixing small things. And there's famous sayings. Deming had a great saying that most improvement in a factory setting in a business comes from simplification. People think things need to be more complicated. Usually they need to be more simple. Then it's easier to fix things. But as far as the business time management versus my personal time management, the business came first. I was very good at spotting waste within the business and saying, that's a waste of time and resources, we should shift it this way. I was terrible at spotting my own. When we did that analysis to say, what is my time worth to the business, all of a sudden I was embarrassed. Because I said, I'm really wasting a lot of company money here when I do things that aren't effective or things that don't really benefit. So that made me change up things in my workday, and reflecting back at the 7 habits, I'm like, well, I have all these things figured out in my personal life. There's no intersection right now. There needs to be that intersection where my life is my life. Whether I'm at work or at home, it's still my life. It's still the time in my life being spent on things. It needs to be valuable. It needs to be worthwhile every hour, not just some of those hours, and not just based on which place I am.
And one thing I really like about the way you run even meetings and everything we have here is we don't have meetings about meetings. You hear that a lot about companies that we're going to have a meeting about this meeting we're going to have next week about a meeting. Like, I just always find that in a company to be the most infuriating thing, and just talking about stuff that has nothing to do with that. How have you structured the company's meeting style, like when you decide when and where to have those?
As soon as it feels stagnant, I change it, because I don't always get it right. And sometimes what starts out as a really good meeting, by the time you're in the 4th meeting, it isn't anymore. So I constantly revisit, what is the purpose of this meeting? Are we getting our money's worth from it? Count the people in the room and multiply their salaries out. Figure out how much this meeting costs. We have a team leaders meeting costs $3,000 an hour.
Yeah.
When you add up all of those people and the values, it's a $3,000 meeting. Well, I mean, that's a down payment on a car.
Yeah.
So are we getting that much benefit from the meeting? And every time I feel like we're not, I change it or cancel it. We've stopped certain meetings. I say, this meeting doesn't have enough value to justify anymore. When someone suggests a meeting, there's a submission form. They have to submit what kind of a meeting, who's going to be involved, is it ongoing or a one-off, how long is it going to take, and we can do, in 2 minutes, I can do a mathematical analysis on that request and say, no, because you're talking about a $500 problem that's going to take a $1,000 meeting. Just deal with the problem, just keep the problem.
Yeah.
It's cheaper to have the $500 problem than to spend the $1,000 meeting trying to figure out how to solve the $500 problem.
Yeah.
But again, you got to go back to your goals. What's the purpose? What are we trying to do? We're all about growth, not just financial growth, growing people. So if people are growing as a function of the meetings, that's a good meeting, no matter what the subject matter is. There are times that I throw someone in a meeting they have no business being in. They're not going to be a contributor. But being in the room will help them. It will help them understand. It'll help them be a contributor later. It will allow them to get better understanding of things that will keep propelling their growth. Sometimes someone's just a high potential employee and we're like, maybe that person should be promoted into a management position. I don't know, put them in a management meeting for a couple of weeks and see how they do. See if they come alive in that kind of environment or they shut down. Lots of people get intimidated when they're in a leadership group.
Yeah.
And the leadership group has to have trust. It's the most important thing. If someone's shutting down, they're not trusting.
Yeah.
If they're not trusting, we're not having real conversations, we're not getting things done, everybody's not growing, and it's a waste of time. So it all comes back to that. I mean, the usage of time. You will see people talk about the pickle jar example or the rocks in the bucket example. It was another video that's been around forever, and it was in Covey's book. The idea that you take the most important things and you do them first. And they use the example of a pickle jar, and they had these big rocks they wanted to put in the pickle jar, and they also had sand, which is all the little things that have to be done and stuff. So the person has to go through this as an exercise, and they take the sand, they dump it into the jar, and then they take the rocks and start putting them in. There's not enough room for all the rocks. And they say, well, I'm going to have to leave some things out. I don't have enough time, because the jar is time. I don't have enough time. And they'd put stickers on the bottom of the rocks and turn it over. And what is that? Oh, big opportunity. Ooh, promotion at work. Vacation with my family. Wait, I don't want to miss those things.
Yeah.
So they start looking at the bottoms of the other ones, trying to figure out what to take out. And they're all big things, and they're all good things. They don't want to give up any of them. So then they take out a new jar. And they say, instead of putting the sand in the jar, why don't you put the rocks in first? And the person puts the rocks in, and they barely fit. And then they start pouring the sand in, and the sand fits around them. And they say, if you've got your priorities straight, you can put those things first and let the other stuff filter around it instead of being a victim of all the small things that happen to you.
Yeah.
You can put your priorities to the front and do those, but you got to know what your priorities are.
Right.
So you've still got to do the goal setting. You've still got to be able to do that.
And on that, everybody talks about work-life balance, and there's always this report that comes out every year that, millions of Americans leave millions of hours, billions of hours on the table of vacation time that they never took. Companies don't pay it out, it doesn't roll over, and they don't feel like they took it. I've got a friend, he got in a higher position. He goes, I will never miss another vacation day in my life. Like, he's taking every single minute. Now, how important do you feel is that, for somebody who's starting a company or for somebody that's working at a company, for them to make sure they take that personal time, shut down a little bit? I mean, I know you say you took 3 days off and that was a big deal for you, but I mean, to take that personal time to finally turn off the phone, disconnect, go out on the ocean in the middle of nowhere. Like, how important is that to you? Or do you feel that is for somebody?
It's hugely important to me in small doses. If I take a day not thinking about work, which is rare because my mind naturally drifts, even if it's not work here in the building, it's opportunities, it's new projects, new businesses. But if I take a day and discipline myself to not consider anything work related, I come back with a fresh perspective and everything starts to fall into place. Different people need different things. You got to know yourself. You have to know what is that thing that re-energizes you. How do you get that rejuvenation? Do you get it by rest, by music, by travel, by whatever, books? I love reading, and I can be reading about work and consider it resting, relaxing. So it's going to be different for every person. But you've got to know what your priorities are. People talk about work-life balance, and anyone who knows me says I don't have it. They say you're working all the time, even when you're not working. But anyone who sees me with my kids knows I'm very engaged with my kids.
Oh, yeah. I've seen you mix the two.
Yeah. Hold, please.
Hang on.
What are you doing? Give me that.
I need 10 minutes.
But anyone who's seen me with kids knows that when the kids are there, I'm all in with the kids. I can't parse it. I can't portion it. It's all in and now all in over here. That's just how I operate.
Yeah.
If someone sees it as a conflict, if they see work-life balance as a conflict, I want to be with my family, but I have to be at work. Or I want to be at work, but I have to be with my family, depending on their situation.
Yeah.
If it's a conflict, it doesn't work. It has to be a synergy. People have to find the way to make both something that's meaningful and important and know why each is important. It's pretty easy to know why family is important. It's your family. I mean, there's not a lot of discussion there.
Yeah.
But why is work important? Is work important because it provides for your family? Therefore, work is still about your family. And that's okay.
Yeah.
Is work about you? Is work about your goals and motivations for which your family is proud of you and supports you? What does that support look like? Is it support or is it sacrifice? Because when it reaches the line where it's sacrifice, your family is sacrificing for your goals, is that really what you want? Each person's got to decide that for themselves.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
You know, with my family, we're very clear about where my lines are drawn. There are lines where, no, this is about work, and work puts the roof over our heads. I'm focusing on this, even though I'd rather go play.
Yeah.
And there are times that work's going to have to wait because I am spending family time right now. But as far as work-life balance, no such thing.
Yeah.
You can't balance the two. They're too intertwined.
So that time right there just kind of gets mixed up, and you've got to figure that out yourself. And that goes back to your, what you've kind of done is laid out your priorities, laid those out, and I think that's important for anybody as they get up into more of a professional life. They're
Sure.
even coming out of college and they want to start working. How do you mix that together? From your party nights to I got to get up in the morning, so maybe I don't go to that bar until 2 in the morning.
If work's making you unhealthy, you're doing something wrong.
Right.
Whether that's working too many hours, or working at a job that gives you ulcers, or being in a place that makes you come home and treat your family poorly because you don't like where you're at.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter why. If work is making your health worse, then you're not in the right place. You're either not handling it right or you're not where you belong.
Yeah.
Because it shouldn't be. You should go home. There are tough days. Everybody has bad days. You go home and you want to kick your dog sometimes because it's just been that kind of a day.
Yeah.
But if that's every day, something is wrong.
Right.
You should be going home tired. If I go home and I'm not tired, there's something wrong.
Yeah.
Because I work
accomplished,
hard.
but accomplished.
Tired but accomplished, like leaving the gym. You're not sweating from standing out in the humidity. You're sweating because you exercise.
Yeah.
And that feels good even though you're out of breath.
Yeah.
It's that kind of a thing, and you either get it or you don't. And people use work-life balance as an excuse to not work hard.
Yeah.
The most common usage I see for someone saying work-life balance is a cop-out for not putting in the hours to make something happen. And then they twist it around to say, well, you don't have good work-life balance because you work too much.
Yeah.
I still don't have good work-life balance. I work all the time, but I'm only at work for 40 hours a week. I'm working the least I've ever worked in my life. I'm at home more than I've ever been in my entire life.
But accomplishing more.
Accomplishing more and tired.
Yeah.
I go home tired because we're doing this. I'm in meeting after meeting after meeting, which might sound boring to some people. I'm energized. Monday's a great day.
Yeah.
We hit one thing after another, and by the end of the day, I'm like, we killed a lot today.
Yeah.
It's time to go. I'm excited to be leaving, even though I'm tired, because I know that was a good day.
Yeah.
We got some stuff done.
Yeah.
It made a difference.
And to kind of close on this, is there anything you've kind of planned in your head that you're going to move forward and changing? That you see, even as you've set out the system and everything, that you could see, I can improve on this, I can change that. Like, have you already kind of think that far ahead?
Yeah. I still have to tweak mine a little bit. But my systems now, looking back, looking at now, and kind of idealizing them, they're pretty close. They're pretty close to where I want them to be. What I have to do now is get other people doing it.
Yeah.
I have to make the next level people.
Is that more of the push?
what I
is
do.
that what you want to do? That's that next level of
Yep.
the push them?
Develop the people, teach them about these things. They're not going to use my method. They don't have to. They need to find their own method. I mean, I'll show them mine. If it works for them, great.
Yeah.
It usually doesn't.
It's the idea of it, though.
It's the idea of having a set of priorities that matter to you based on who you are and who you want to be, assigning things that fit those priorities to time that you're going to spend in a way that makes a difference and drives you closer to your goals without wasting a lot of time. That's the key. And, there's all these things. You can go back to Wilfredo Pareto, the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule. 20% of your effort results in 80% of your gain. So what if you only did that 20% every day? You think about that. Let's say you work a 10-hour day. 2 hours of that day, unless you are doing pure production work, like assembly line work, if you're in a management role, if you're in a leadership role, if you're in a marketing role, 20% of your day produces 80% of the results. What if you just stopped working 8 hours a day? What if you work 10 now, you work 2, and you only want to be paid half? Would you do it?
No. I'm telling you no.
Why not?
Well, I like what I do. It takes time to do and accomplish what I need to do. But, I obviously don't want to make less so that my lifestyle outside of here can stay the same and I can do the things I want.
But if you only had to work 2 hours a day and got half your paycheck, you just freed up 8 hours. You could put in 2 more hours that way and get your whole paycheck back again.
If I'm accomplishing the same work.
If you're picking that 80-20 stuff.
Yeah.
If you're picking those leveraged things and spend your time only on those, you produce a disproportionate result. So if you limit yourself to only those things, you get a dramatically better result for that amount of time. And then you find someone else to do the other things because you're not leveraging your time when you're doing those. It's the biggest thing that I do now is I could do that, but I can't do it 3 times faster than someone else. So someone else should do it. There are things that I see and I say, no, give me that. In an hour, I'm going to have 5 hours worth of work done on that because that plays to my strengths.
Yeah.
We do that all the time with Discord when people have a conflict. That's one of the things that I excel at is resolving conflict. When 2 people have a disagreement, I'm pretty good at understanding both sides of a disagreement and helping them find common ground. So that's a thing that, this can be an ongoing problem that can suck the life out of a department and drain company resources because people aren't working well together. I can sit those 2 people down in a room and figure out their priorities and figure out why they should be helping each other and convey that to them. And now we all move forward with better productivity and a better environment. Everything improves. That's a great use of my time. And there's probably only one other person in the company that can do that. So it's a good thing for me to be working on. Yeah. Same thing with a lot of the growth stuff. A lot of times, I'm the one that comes in on a Monday and says, hey, I've been thinking about this person. I've looked at all of our scoring, our heuristics. I've also looked at comments from their coworkers. I've talked with their supervisor. I've heard a couple of side conversations. And I'm putting all this together, and I think there's something here that we've missed. I think there is something about this person that if we explore it together, will make them infinitely better than they are right now. They'll be happier and more productive and fit in better and all these things. If we can find that thing that they're meant to do, have them become the best version of themselves. And there's very few people in the company that can do that. So I look at things like that and say, what if I only did that? What if I stopped looking at the bank accounts? What if I stopped looking at the receivables? What if I stopped? I'm a business owner. I can't stop doing that. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
My brain would explode. I need to know exactly what's going on. No, I don't. No, I don't, because I have Emily doing that.
You got people you can trust.
And if
out
something's wrong, she will tell me, and then I will take a look at it and we'll solve it. But I don't need to be doing that on a daily basis because I'm not doing anything beneficial. All I'm doing is checking boxes in my head. Yep, that's okay, that's okay, that's okay.
There's nothing you can do to help, so why waste your time on it?
Yeah. And not on a day-to-day basis, anyway. It's like watching your stocks. They always tell people if you've invested in stocks, don't watch them.
No, don't.
That's your retirement. Just leave it there.
Leave the GameStop alone.
Yeah.
Unless it's one of those situations.
But that's one of those things that people get used to doing. You see it all the time when someone gets elevated for the first time. They're doing a physical task, and now they're doing a supervisory task over the people doing that physical task. And they sit right back down and do it. I did it.
Yeah.
My mentor caught me doing it. He walked into one of the buildings I was responsible for and caught me at a production station doing some work. And he walked over and he looked and he said, hey, buddy, what you doing? And I said, oh, this is a really important case. I have to make sure it's perfect. I'm making sure it's perfect before it goes out and stuff. He says, oh, that's good. That's admirable. But I have a question. If you're sitting in the technician's chair, who's sitting in the manager's chair? I said, well, I mean, I'll be back in there in a few minutes. And he says, I don't think you understand my question. You have a seat. It's in there. If you want to sit out here, I'll get someone else to sit in there. And I'm like, oh my God, why is he being like this?
I'm trying to help.
I'm a good boss.
Yeah.
I'm sitting down alongside my team and getting the work out. That's what I'm supposed to do. Lead by example. Be in the trenches. Lead from the front. All these, slogans.
Help where I can.
Yeah. And it is good. It's good for morale. It's good for the people to see that you know what you're doing. It's good for them to know that you will step in when needed, that they're not on their own, that you're one of them. But it's bad for the business because if the captain is down in the engineering room working on something, who is steering the boat? Not the captain. And who's the best person to steer the boat? The captain. So the most important job in the building that can only be done by one person isn't getting done, or is getting done by someone who's not qualified to do it.
Well, because now you're wasting the time that they're paying you to go do something that
Right.
somebody else was paid to do at that time.
And that was his other line.
Yeah,
He's like, I'm paying you way too much for you to be
For you
doing
to be
physical
out there.
labor.
Yeah.
If you're going to be doing physical labor, I'm changing your rate of pay. If you enjoy doing it, God bless you, and I will adjust your pay and change your title.
Yeah.
But you've got a different job right now. You need to let me know.
So to kind of sum it up, it's find those balances, but also find your own way. Find what you can to find those tools to help you manage your life, because everybody freaks out over their time and what they're doing right and what they're doing wrong. So I think that's kind of the summary of everything.
Most people are in denial.
Most people are in denial, correct?
It doesn't take 40 hours to do most jobs.
No. Because everybody, you got time for lunch and everything. You can get it done quicker. So manage your time, get all that done. That's going to wrap it up this week for Completing the Puzzle with Jason DeFranco. Thanks for being here, buddy.
Thanks for the questions.
And make sure you hit the subscribe button. Make sure you hit that like button on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, all the fun places we're on. And we will see you in the next episode.